Young Master Kim from a wealthy family had a passion for cycling, and I was invited as a special guest to participate in the cycling race he organized around the lake. But at the starting point, I saw my wife show up with a junior schoolmate, also here for the race. Just as I walked over, my wife suddenly slapped me across the face in front of everyone. "You're really this paranoid? Do you have to follow me everywhere I go? Do you even know how to ride a bike? What are you doing here? Making a fool of yourself?" I was just about to show my special invitation when her junior, Peter, let out a laugh. I laughed too. "Want a race? Sure. If I lose, I'll strip and swim across the lake naked. But if you lose, you'll divorce Elizabeth." I nodded slightly. But what they didn't know was, I used to be the most talented cyclist in the entire country. Chapter 1. Whoa. Who's this loudmouth over here? What? The loser has to get divorced? Now this is getting interesting. From the looks of it, these two aren't even the same age. Once you're past 25, your physical performance really starts to drop. The moment I said that line, the crowd of business moguls burst into laughter. Most of them had hired professional cyclists for this race. At the very least, their riders were club level, all aiming for first place. This event was full of hidden masters. Even the weakest amateur had at least 5 years of experience in cycling. Someone like me, who didn't look like a pro at all, naturally became their target for mockery. Elizabeth's expression showed a hint of concern. At first, I thought she was worried about me. I was just about to step forward and show my credentials when she suddenly sneered. "Eric, I suggest you give it up. You might not be afraid of losing face, but Peter and I are. He's here to race on my behalf today." I froze for a second and immediately understood what she meant. This cycling event, hosted by young Master Kim, offered a chance to collaborate with the Kim family for whoever took first place. That's why all these CEOs had spared no expense, hiring athletes from teams and clubs. Elizabeth was no exception. She was doing it for a small company. So when she said that, she meant two things. First, she didn't want me embarrassing her. Second, she didn't want Peter wasting his energy racing me before the real event. My own wife humiliating me like that in front of everyone. I forced a smile and said nothing. But that junior of hers clearly wasn't going to let it go. Peter stepped forward, gave me a once-over, and let out a smug laugh. "Eric, if you want to race, then let's race. I don't mind. I'm just worried your body won't keep up." Then he turned to Elizabeth with a smirk. "Don't worry, Elizabeth. How much stamina could he really burn off me? I'll be back after a short rest." He snorted again. I'll show him the difference between an amateur and a pro. The moment he said that, some CEO who clearly loved drama offered to provide us with bikes. Seeing this, Peter started introducing himself. "Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Peter, here representing Vast Sea Company and Chairman Elizabeth as her cyclist. My total ride mileage is between 3,000 and 5,000 kilometers. I've participated in many events, Tour de France, various cycling festivals, with solid results. I'm currently ranked T1. Listening to all his so-called accolades, I felt utterly bored. All his races were open to amateurs. Not only had I done everything he listed, I also had certificates and trophies from professional level competitions. The only reason I'm a nobody now is because my family insisted I retire." But in the ears of these business tycoons, his words sounded impressively professional. The crowd's mocking gazes toward me grew even more intense. Some were already joking about me diving into the lake right away. Chapter 2. It's a bit too early to talk about divorce when the race hasn't even started. I shook my head, my tone disapproving. But my refusal only made everyone around think I was just being stubborn and in denial. "Come on, if you're not up for it, stop pretending to be tough. Yeah, there's no shame in losing to a pro. Don't throw yourself in just because of some impulsive pride. This isn't just some game. Everyone here has at least some credentials to their name." Peter, seeing my attitude, let out a cold snort and dropped the pretense. "Eric, if you're that confident, why don't we raise the stakes a little? That tiny bet just now was a bit lame, wasn't it?" "Sure. What kind of bet do you want?" I nodded slightly, still calm and composed. "Whatever game you want to play, I'll play it to the end." Peter burst out laughing, clearly thinking of something amusing. "All right then, let's add one more condition. The loser has to quack like a duck. Wouldn't that make it more fun?" Elizabeth looked at me, practically seething. "Eric, will you just stop already? We've been married for years. How come I never knew you were so into cycling? What are you trying to prove here?" Her words struck a strange chord in my heart. We've been married for 3 years. Aside from the first 6 months of novelty, she never cared about my hobbies. She didn't even know there was a bike in our basement. She never paid attention. And now she says it like it's my fault she doesn't know. If you ask me, you should just admit defeat. Elizabeth wasn't telling me to give up because she was worried about my health. She just didn't want to lose face. After all, her company wasn't huge, but not insignificant either. Many of the smaller business owners here knew her. I stayed silent. Peter, sensing her intentions, quickly stepped in to reassure her. "Don't worry, Elizabeth. I'll go easy on Eric, make sure he doesn't lose too badly. Elizabeth looked at him, visibly relieved. If only he were half as considerate as you are, we wouldn't be in this mess. As she said this, she even shot me a subtle glance. Watching them standing together like that, so close, I couldn't help the bitterness in my chest. All right, since it's all decided, let's get this race started, shall we? Peter began doing warm-ups as he walked toward the starting line. Oh right, Eric, here, this is for you. After I finally managed to borrow a bike from one of the athletes, a pair of cycling shoes landed in front of me. I looked up to see Peter's smug face, his tone generous, almost like charity. You didn't bring gear, did you? These clip-in shoes, I'll lend them to you. I think we were the same size. I glanced at the shoes, a flicker of disgust crossing my face. No thanks, you can keep them. My look of disdain was seen by everyone around, which only made the mockery louder. They all thought I was just too inexperienced to know what clip-in shoes were even for. Hearing the murmurs and snide remarks, I shook my head and looked sideways at Peter. No, I'm not wearing them because, to deal with someone like him, I don't need high-end gear. As soon as the words left my mouth, the crowd saw it as another outrageous boast. Eric, why do you insist on embarrassing me? All right, Elizabeth, it's common. Ordinary people always think they're on top after just a few days of practice. Elizabeth stared at me, full of disappointment. After Peter comforted her, he turned his attention back to the race, with the referee raising the flag. Both Peter and I took off one after the other. His initial burst of speed was impressive, with a rapid cadence. I turned my head slightly to glance at him, and simply let out a cold chuckle. Chapter 3. At the start of a cycling race, it's common practice to ease in with steady pedaling and a moderate cadence. First, to conserve energy. Second, to prevent lactic acid from building up too quickly in the leg muscles. This is especially important when warm-ups were insufficient, like in our case, because going all out too soon risks straining joints and causing irreversible injuries. It's basically a fundamental rule in any competitive sport. So I couldn't understand why Peter started by sprinting. How was he planning to sustain that for the long haul? But Peter was all smug confidence, clearly focused on crushing me early. He pedaled like mad and quickly pulled ahead. I, on the other hand, started at a calm and steady pace, which immediately drew ridicule from the surrounding business crowd. Is he okay? Why is he so slow at the start? I've watched plenty of races, no one starts that slow. Maybe he doesn't even know how to ride. If you ask me, there's no point watching anymore. The outcome's already obvious. While the CEOs scoffed, the athletes from their hired teams and clubs watched my posture and pacing with more thoughtful expressions. I controlled my breathing, and even had the leisure to admire the lakeside view as I maintained a steady, unhurried pace behind Peter. Each time Peter tried to drop me by pushing harder and speeding up, I just steadily closed the gap again like it was nothing. That's when Elizabeth's voice came through my earpiece, gritting with frustration. Eric, since you chose to race, then race seriously. Why are you embarrassing yourself like this? I must have been blind to marry you, you only ever humiliate me. Before I could respond, Peter's voice immediately followed, trying to comfort her. Elizabeth, don't be angry. No need for this. You chose me, I won't let you down. I had no idea why they were having that kind of conversation in the earpiece. What was even the point? Meanwhile, the ever-excited spectators on the sidelines started taking bets on the race. Nearly everyone bet on Peter. Not a single person backed me. I noticed my odds were ridiculously high, so I bet on myself. This move made the crowd burst into laughter. This is the first time I've seen someone bet on themselves. What a guy. If you're embarrassed, at least get a friend to place it for you. Seriously, just threw 20 grand in like it's nothing. Hope he doesn't lose the race and the money. Right then, Elizabeth's voice suddenly cut in again through the earpiece. Eric, let me make this clear, any money you lose has nothing to do with me or Vast Sea Company. Figure it out yourself. Don't expect a single cent from me. Even though I already knew how Elizabeth viewed me, being publicly disowned like that in front of so many people still made me angry. Gripping the handlebars tighter in frustration, my foot slipped on the pedal for just a moment. The bike tilted for a split second, but I recovered instantly. Honestly, that didn't even count as a mistake for someone at my level, especially when I was up against a wannabe like Peter. But that slight wobble was caught perfectly on camera and shown live on the big screen. A wave of jeers followed from the crowd of bosses. Did you see that? He almost wiped out just now. Exactly. Told him he should have worn the clip-in shoes. Now his foot slips. Who's he gonna blame? Does this guy even know how to ride a bike? The way he started was weird from the beginning. Chapter 4. Elizabeth seemed utterly humiliated and snapped through the earpiece. Eric, stop making a fool of yourself. How about this, if you quit now, I'll cover the money you bet. Just don't embarrass us in front of young Master Kim when he shows up. If this partnership falls through because of you, I swear I won't forgive you. Stop right now. Do you hear me? But I completely ignored her and kept my pace steady. The race had already started. Who was she to order me around like some disposable tool? Just then, Peter suddenly slowed down a bit and spoke openly into the mic. Eric, let it go. Man, if I remember right, you're what, 5 years older than me? You're almost 30. Why put yourself through this? Why not quit before things get too ugly? Don't end up embarrassing Elizabeth, losing the race and the business deal. In the end, it might have been better not to race at all. He even sighed, as if genuinely concerned. I get it, you're new to the sport and your ego's riding high. But at your age, it's honestly too late to catch up to me. Not trying to crush your self-esteem here. It's just reality. Elizabeth, hearing Peter's comment, became even more furious. Eric, you've completely humiliated me. I let out a cold laugh, my pedaling rhythm unchanged, but my tone sharp. Humiliated, Elizabeth. Now you feel humiliated, but when you were getting all cozy with your sweet little junior here, you didn't think about that, did you? What are you implying? Elizabeth roared in anger through the earpiece, clearly flustered. Eric, are you seriously accusing me? Fine. When we get home, we're getting divorced. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to Peter. Peter, crush him. Don't hold back. Let him see what a loser he really is. Peter, fired up by her words, surged ahead again, his bike tearing forward with new force. Hearing Elizabeth say divorce so casually stunned me. I hadn't expected that 3 years of marriage could be tossed aside so easily from her mouth. Clenching the handlebars tightly, I made a decision. Screw it. No more pretending. Peter's sudden burst of speed drew gasps from the watching crowd. And truth be told, what he said earlier wasn't entirely wrong. He was only 25, right in the prime of a man's strength and endurance. Competing in a race like this at that age, he was practically invincible. His performance was so sharp that even some of the pro athletes hired by the CEOs looked a little wary. But then, just as quickly, they relaxed again. Because no matter how good Peter looked now, burning that much energy this early was going to cost him later. Who would take the final victory? Still hard to say. The bosses seemed to come to the same realization and began taunting Elizabeth with thinly veiled sarcasm. Chairwoman Elizabeth, maybe your husband should just drop out. He's 30 already, not exactly a young buck. Exactly. If he loses, won't that be worse for everyone's face? We all have to see each other again in the future. Why make it awkward? And besides, the athlete you brought still has to race later. Right. We'd hate to win and be accused of taking advantage. Just after their sneers finished, Peter chimed in with another jab. Did you hear that? Everyone says you're out of your league. Why don't you just quit already? But before he could finish his sentence, a wave of gasps burst through the earpiece. Chapter 5. What's going on? Eric's speed. What the hell is that? Wasn't he super slow earlier? How is he suddenly accelerating like this? Peter swallowed the rest of his unfinished sentence and stole a glance behind him, finally feeling a little reassured. From his view, I was still far behind, no real change in distance. But the exclamations in the earpiece didn't stop. That cadence, it's already higher than most amateur riders. Peter looked back again, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Wait, did the gap just get smaller? His doubtful muttering echoed in the earpiece. I flashed him a peace sign from behind and continued pushing the pedals. My speed rose, again. Peter's face shifted from shock to confusion, but he quickly tried to calm Elizabeth over the mic. Don't worry, Elizabeth. He's still got a long way to go before catching up. Besides, if he keeps this sudden pace up, he'll run out of steam before the end. I almost wanted to throw that line right back at him. Run out of steam. This was still my warm-up. I couldn't help myself. I spoke up. Peter, how about we make this a little more interesting? Forget the skinny dip. Whoever loses has to streak half a lap around the lake first. I grinned as I raised the stakes. That kind of bet would guarantee front-page news the next morning. Fine. Just don't regret it later. Peter hesitated for a second, then gritted his teeth and agreed. I kept riding, actually enjoying myself. The lap around the lake felt pretty nice, cool and breezy. Meanwhile, the athlete who lent me his bike voiced his suspicion. Something's weird. It doesn't even look like he's going full power. That comment made the people around him start murmuring in confusion. Then the cyclist pulled up the data display from the bike and showed it to everyone. On the screen, the cadence and speed were steadily rising, smoothly and consistently, not like a sudden burst at all. No way. How's that possible? Who speeds up like that without sprinting? They couldn't believe it, especially Peter. He even began doubting reality. Is the bike sensor broken or something? How could he increase speed like this? He's not even a pro. What kind of joke is this? I didn't bother responding, but Peter's breathing through the earpiece, heavy, uneven, said more than enough. Even he didn't believe what he was seeing. Because let's be real, this race was backed by all these CEOs. It was practically half a professional competition. All our gear, from start to finish, had been calibrated and tested by multiple staff members before the event. Claiming the sensors were broken, no one was going to buy that, especially since the speed difference was now visible to the naked eye. By now, we had passed the 2/3 mark, and the gap between us was shrinking fast, almost gone. Hearing Peter's breath grow heavier with every second, I still had the clarity to offer a reminder. Peter, watch your pace. The final sprint hasn't even started and your breathing's already off. Aren't you supposed to be a top-level amateur? Do I really need to coach you? Peter paused at my words, clearly still looking down on me. Shut the hell up. You think I don't know how to control my breathing? You just got lucky catching up and now you think you're some hotshot. Then, just to taunt me, he took one hand off the handlebars and flipped me the middle finger, as if to prove something. He slammed down harder on the pedals. I could see the veins bulging in his thighs. Peter, go. This is it, the final stretch. Everything depends on this. Elizabeth's voice blared louder than ever in the earpiece, cheering him on with all she had. Chapter 6. You've got this. Hang in there. Just 1/3 left. Although Elizabeth was still cheering Peter on, the other CEOs had mostly gone quiet. Clearly, the way I was steadily increasing my speed had made everyone begin to question the actual skill levels involved. After all, I looked far more composed and effortless. Eric doesn't seem like just an average rider. That data looks professional level, right? Hard to say, but something like this, shouldn't Elizabeth have known? Someone turned to ask Elizabeth, but she said nothing. At the final 1,000-meter mark, Peter and I instinctively lowered our upper bodies, both preparing for the last sprint. That's when the earpiece suddenly crackled with noise. Whoa, who just showed up? Is that young Master Kim? Step aside. It's young Master Kim. That's the host of the whole event. Right, guy's got money to burn. Hearing all those flattering voices, I knew Kim had arrived, but the real drama was just beginning. What's going on here? Hasn't the race even started yet? Young Master Kim stepped out of his car, speaking with a lazy, irreverent tone. One of the businessmen quickly stepped forward, bowing respectfully. Yes, young Master Kim, the official race hasn't begun. This is just a private warm-up match between Vast C's team members. Kim squinted at the big screen for a moment. Why are two people from Vast C racing each other? Where's the actual boss of Vast C? Elizabeth finally stepped up, forcing a sigh as she braced herself to explain. Young Master Kim, it's like this. My husband insisted on racing the rider I hired. I tried to talk him out of it multiple times, but he just wouldn't listen. He's being stubborn. Kim looked at her, pausing with a faint look of interest. He let out a quiet, drawn-out, "Oh, I see." His reaction was unreadable. He didn't say whether he was pleased or annoyed, nor did he comment on the legitimacy of this private match. Sensing the ambiguity, Elizabeth quickly switched to a private channel and snapped at me through the mic. Eric, that's enough. Young Master Kim is here. The real race is about to start. Stop humiliating yourself and surrender already. I let out a cold laugh and shot back without hesitation. Surrender? Why would I surrender? Anyone with eyes can tell who's going to win now. With that, I surged forward, instantly pulling up alongside Peter. On the other end of the mic, Elizabeth hesitated for a few seconds before forcing out a desperate plea. Stop this madness. Fine, I won't divorce you. Okay. Hearing that, I nearly burst out laughing and answered flatly. Elizabeth, if you'd said that 2 hours ago, maybe I'd have cared. But now, I don't give a damn. Right after that, I adjusted my breathing and unleashed my full power. Elizabeth froze at my words, just about to respond again, when suddenly, a voice from the monitoring crew cried out, "Oh my God, it's happening. He's starting his final sprint. All his performance metrics are spiking. Cadence 125. Speed 37 kilometers per hour. Is he even human?" Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. Most professional cyclists average a cadence of around 100, and this speed. Absolutely elite. Chapter 7. Peter's rhythm faltered so badly he nearly wiped out. No way. He's just a washed-up middle-aged guy. How the hell can he post numbers like that? But no one responded to him anymore. In fact, no one was even watching the aerial live feed. They were all holding their breath, eyes locked on the finish line. From this distance, our figures had just come into view, and the one closest to the finish line was clearly me. I picked up my pedaling pace, and as I passed Peter, I could hear his breathing, ragged and wheezing like an old bellows. Peter was drenched in sweat, clearly nearing his absolute limit. I curled my lips into a smirk, then surged past him without hesitation, drawing a collective gasp from the crowd. Did you see that? He overtook him, so clean, so steady. Yeah, that speed's insane. After such a long ride, how does he still have that kind of explosive power? He passed him. He really passed him. Even from a distance, I could already make out Elizabeth's wide-eyed disbelief and utter shock. From the moment I overtook Peter, his defeat was basically sealed. The distance between us grew rapidly, and with the referee's whistle, I crossed the finish line, effortlessly. At that moment, young Master Kim stood up and began clapping. Only after he started did the others follow with scattered, hesitant applause. Everyone still looked stunned, uncertain what they had just witnessed. I gradually slowed down and came to a stop. One of the staff handed me a bottle of water, but I didn't drink it right away, just focused on steadying my breathing. Not long after, Peter crossed the finish line, but no one clapped for him. His face was deathly pale from exhaustion. He unclipped from the pedals, stumbled off the bike, and could barely stay on his feet. Several of the CEOs who had bet on Peter now wore dark expressions, especially Elizabeth. She had wagered the most. She was now glaring at me like she wanted to rip me apart. Watching them all eat crow, I could barely hold back a laugh. Eric, how were you that fast? Did you use something? Peter, finally catching his breath, rushed at me, shouting accusations. I completely ignored his yelling. Instead, I turned to the gathered bosses, including Elizabeth, and spoke calmly. Everyone here placed bets, right? I trust you'll all honor your wagers. Their faces twisted with reluctance, but with young Master Kim present, no one dared renege. Then someone suddenly changed the subject with a knowing tone. Now that you're here, young Master Kim, should we go ahead and start the official race? Hearing that, a wave of contempt rose in my chest. Start the official race now, right after Peter and I had exhausted ourselves. What a shameless ambush. What kind of timing is that? Holding the race now would be nothing but taking advantage of someone's weakness. Elizabeth's face twisted in anger. Peter, meanwhile, had collapsed to the ground, completely spent. And of course, now that one person had pushed for it, several others joined in with pointed comments. What are you saying? Even if Vast C skips this round, that doesn't mean you'd win. The championship isn't automatically yours. Exactly. We can't just cancel the whole race because your rider's too tired. They chose to hold a private race right before this. It's their own fault. Now the crowd split into two camps, those demanding the race proceed immediately, and those who thought it was clearly opportunistic. Enough. Everyone piped down. At last, young Master Kim, silent until now, finally spoke. He shook his head slowly. I don't think we need to hold the race anymore. You all saw the numbers on the big screen just now, didn't you? Chapter 8. As he spoke, young Master Kim pointed directly at the large screen in the center of the venue. Anyone here think their rider can top those numbers? At that, the crowd fell into collective shame, because those stats, they weren't just impressive, they were national competition level, and I had delivered them effortlessly from start to finish. My real strength, impossible to gauge. For a long moment, the entire venue was silent. Then, Kim walked over to my side, lifted my arm, and declared loudly, in that case, the champion of the Million Enterprises Cycling Championship is Eric. Everyone stood frozen for a few seconds before a thunderous wave of applause broke out. Elizabeth finally snapped back to reality. She hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make up her mind and approached me with a face full of forced delight. Eric, why you really are the champion. Now she was suddenly on my team, practically rushing over to talk partnership terms. So, does this mean our Vast C company will get to collaborate with the Kim Group? I couldn't believe how shameless she was. Without hesitation, I shot her down. Sorry, even if I won, that doesn't mean Vast C gets to work with Kim Group. Elizabeth, do I need to remind you, you were the one who lost. Elizabeth's temper flared, but she held it back and forced a stiff smile. Eric, come on, don't be petty. I only said those things earlier because I was upset. We're about to talk business now. Don't make a scene. I'll make it up to you when we get home. I shook my head and let out a cold laugh. I said no, and I meant it. What part of no don't you understand? Elizabeth's face darkened in embarrassment. In frustration, she tried to use young Master Kim as leverage. What's that supposed to mean? Are you questioning young Master Kim's decision? That made me laugh out loud. I turned to Kim. So, what about you? Are you backing me on this? Kim scratched his head and gave an awkward grin. I'm with my bro on this one. The entire crowd went dead silent. He just called you what? Elizabeth looked completely stunned. Peter stood there slack-jawed. I laughed, slung an arm over Kim's shoulder, and gave him a friendly pat. Good kid. Still remember I'm your big brother. Huh. You. Elizabeth's eyes widened like she'd just witnessed a car crash. This was something she had never seen coming, because I'd never told her. Not once. I sighed and shrugged. I meant to tell you, Elizabeth. I'm part of the Kim family too. Young Master Kim, real name Luis, was my half-brother. I now go by the last name Lin, my mother's surname. Back then, I had a falling out with the family. After my mom passed away and my father remarried, I left home, but over the years, those resentments slowly faded, especially since my stepmother had raised Luis without any resentment toward me, and I'd genuinely grown to like him as a brother. Yep, he's my real brother, big brother. Luis grinned at me proudly like a little king. You never told me. Elizabeth could hardly believe it. Panic now completely replacing her earlier arrogance. She lowered her voice and begged. I'm sorry, Eric, really, I didn't know. I'm so sorry, please, take back what you said. Vast C really needs this partnership. I ignored her completely and took a slow sip from my water bottle. Seeing that her pleas were getting her nowhere, Elizabeth turned desperately to Luis. Young Master Kim, I was blind. Okay, please, I'm begging you. Chapter 9. But Luis had already seen through what kind of person Elizabeth really was during the race. He had zero goodwill left for her. Man, I almost called you sis-in-law earlier. What a joke. You don't deserve my brother. Where do you get the nerve to come begging me? After he said that, I turned to Peter. Peter, now that you've lost, aren't you supposed to fulfill your end of the bet? Streak half a lap around the lake, and jump in while quacking like a duck. Luis burst out laughing right then and there. Bro, you're savage. I crossed my arms and gave him a grin. For a moment, all eyes were on Peter. Peter's face went pale as a ghost. He forced a shaky smile. See, come on now. We're all adults here. Isn't this a little much? Seeing we had zero sympathy, he turned to Elizabeth for help. Elizabeth. But after weighing her options, she chose to stand with us, and scolded him with an annoyed look. Enough already. You lost. Fair and square. I didn't agree to the bet for you. If young Master Kim wants to see it, then let him see it. She even cast us a flattering glance after that. Peter had no choice. Eyes red and burning with humiliation, he followed through with the bet, turning the entire atmosphere into something lighthearted and hilarious. Eventually, red-faced and furious, Peter stormed off the venue. Elizabeth, however, still clung to some shred of hope. She hesitated before opening her mouth. So does this mean I can still? Luis caught the look and curled his lips slightly, answering with one word. No. Why not? I already apologized. Eric and I are still married. Why shouldn't I get this opportunity? Elizabeth froze, her frustration spilling out. Luis shrugged and looked at her with outright contempt. Why? Because this whole competition was set up for my brother. Then he leaned in slightly and added in a low, brutally honest voice. Chairwoman Elizabeth, if you'd really been on my brother's side, then the winner of this prearranged race would have been you. You're the one who threw away your chance. What do you expect me to do? At those words, several of the CEOs around them perked up with interest. No one thought Luis was being unfair, because even if the race had been 100% above board, none of their athletes could have beaten me. Now, all that was left was one open partnership slot. And let's be honest, that's all they ever really cared about, the slot, not the title. Young Master Kim, in that case, does that mean we can choose a new partner? Exactly. We're all still here, after all. Can you just tell us clearly how you'll pick? Save us from wasting more effort. Luis turned and glanced at me. Bro. I casually pointed to the boss who owned the athlete that had lent me his bike. When everyone had looked down on me, they were the ones who lent a helping hand. And throughout the whole race, they'd mocked me the least. As expected, the result brought joy to some and bitterness to others. Those who had bet and lost were forced to pay up under Luis's quiet but unmistakable pressure. Only Elizabeth still tried to cling to the last thread of possibility, to win me back. Eric. I know there's probably nothing I can say now that would make you forgive me. I just hope, for the sake of our 3 years together, that you could give me one more chance. Her eyes were red, on the verge of tears, and she even glanced subtly at Luis. I know this failure to secure the deal is entirely my fault. I just hope there's a chance in the future for Vastc to work with the Kim Group. But all I felt when I looked at her now was disgust. So I just brushed it off with a vague, indifferent reply. Chapter 10. That's not up to me. I don't meddle in family business. As for forgiving you, don't be ridiculous. With that, I turned and walked away with Luis. Eric. Elizabeth choked on my name as she called out. I paused slightly, then turned back under the weight of her hopeful gaze, only to reply in the simplest, coldest way. Make sure to send over the divorce papers. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. The crowd gradually dispersed, leaving behind only Elizabeth, standing frozen in place, tears streaming down her face. She and Peter fell out completely after that. Following the championship, she placed all the blame on him. I heard she took back everything she'd ever given him over the years and kicked Peter straight out of her life. During that time, she still didn't stop trying to reconcile with me, but the only response she ever received was a court summons for divorce proceedings. At this point, I had nothing more to say to Elizabeth. On the day the divorce ruling was finalized, she showed up looking haggard and miserable, tears running down her cheeks as she stared at me. Eric, do you really have to treat me like this? What did I mean to you? What did we mean? Her eyes were bloodshot, and her face twisted in rage and despair. Do you want to push me to death? If you really go through with this divorce, I swear, I'll kill myself right in front of you. She even tried to use suicide to stop me. As she pulled out a small fruit knife, somehow smuggled past security, she was immediately pinned to the table by the courthouse guards. But I knew her too well. I didn't believe a word she said. Even the way she looked, so broken, so desperate, was probably just an act. Elizabeth may have been a foolish woman, but she was still a businesswoman. Once she found out I was part of the Kim family, there was no way she'd give up that easily. Truthfully, I had originally intended to divorce her earlier, but I kept putting it off, thinking the timing wasn't quite right. Now, It's clear, waiting was the wiser choice. After that day, the court granted a forced divorce. Elizabeth and I were no longer bound in any way. And once the divorce was finalized, Luis began his quiet takeover of Vast Sea. I knew he was doing it to stand up for me, and I didn't interfere in the family's decisions. So I let him do as he pleased. During that time, I also returned to the Kim household and gradually mended ties with the family. Turns out, there hadn't really been that much resentment to begin with, just my own immaturity during those rebellious teenage years. After the divorce, Elizabeth still tried several times to get back in touch with me, but unfortunately for her, this time she couldn't even get past the gates of the Kim estate. I heard from the guards that when the security team escorted her off the property, she was screaming and sobbing uncontrollably, begging to be let in. But no matter what she said or did, it no longer had anything to do with me. Within a few months, Elizabeth's company collapsed completely. Peter, who had tried to win her back before, cut ties with her immediately after hearing the news and quickly attached himself to a new sugar mommy. Elizabeth was left saddled with massive debt, her glamorous past long gone. She tried to find work again, but my brother Luis made sure that wouldn't happen. Almost every reputable company in the city blacklisted her. With no options left, she could only land a low-level job at some no-name firm, doing grunt work for a laughably low wage, just another faceless office worker. One day after work, she happened to run into Peter again, this time flaunting his new wealthy girlfriend. After months of mounting pressure, something in Elizabeth finally snapped. She slammed her foot on the gas and rammed into them both. But she didn't stop there. Witnesses say she ran over them again and again. Peter died on the spot from his injuries. The wealthy woman ended up in a coma, basically brain dead. Elizabeth was arrested on the spot, and what awaited her was the full weight of the law. But none of that has anything to do with me anymore. I returned to the Kim estate, and finally started my new life.